Okay, England-Scotland Women's Rugby World Cup quarter-final has just finished down at Ashton Gate in Bristol. England have won 40 points to 8. It was 26-3 at half-time. Real difficult conditions for both sides. I will say this, Scotland started the game better, and England were forced to defend and were getting a bit exposed defensively. And that first 10 minutes, Scotland played really well in the conditions. They only get a penalty out of all that possession from Nelson after just 4 minutes. But they really did challenge England. England were challenged defensively. And I think that's an area where France in the semi-final could get some joy. You know, England looked a little bit on the back foot defensively. Scotland were breaking the game line and gaining metres, and it took a while for England to settle into the game. Yes, the weather conditions, I think, have played a part. Once England get that first try from Clifford, yeah, it started to become a little bit of an avalanche, and what didn't help Scotland was their set play. Scrum line out was a mess. In conditions such as we've seen the last couple of days over this weekend, as they are, windy, rain, heavy rain, slippery conditions, you need a functioning set piece to not only get territory but also build momentum and build pressure. And even when Scotland had a scrum or had a line out, inevitably England would win the ball. And I think that's done for Scotland because for large periods they couldn't get their hands on the ball. That first half, the game's won at half time. Before half time, Clifford gets a try on 12 minutes. Tallon gets a try on 16 minutes, and this is won by the forwards. England's forwards have won them the game. Then you've got to look at players like Aitchinson, for example, whose kicking game also and that movement and playmaking. Yes, that is a contributing factor to England's win, but the forwards win the game. They won the scrum, they won the line out, they won the contest when it comes to rucks and mauls, and they won the physical battle. And also, partly because winning the physical battle and getting that dominance, the territory and then the points ultimately come. Clifford gets her first try in 12 minutes. Talling, 16 minutes. Really, very, very, Talling, powerful ball runner in the loose. That was on 16 minutes. Now, the cocaine try that's disallowed, I'm going to get a bit on my soapbox here because we saw a try disallowed for Ireland in the last game against France, whereby they score, they take the conversion, they're back at halfway, then the TMO comes in and says, you want to check that, there's a knock on there. Now in this case, the try scored, the referee gives it, they're about to take the conversion, and then the TMO chimes in. We need consistency in this area. We do. We actually do, because under old interpretation of the laws, and I know they've changed it recently, when I was playing at school or at my local rugby club, you were always told, take that conversion quickly, unless the touch judge or the lino, or the ref changes their mind. Always taught to get it as quickly as possible, convert the try or attempt to convert the try and restart play. That was the same when it came to elite level and international level. You would always, if there was a little bit of suspicion, get it over quickly. Now, I don't know when World Rugby changed that, but they now have. And between two games on the same day, we have seen a difference in the speed of decision making when it comes to the TMO. Now, both decisions are correct. There is no doubt there is an obstruction with the rolling maul when they set up the rolling maul. There's no doubt there is an obstruction there. And there was no doubt in the previous game that there was a knock-on in the build-up to the try. But why is it that in this game the TMO is really quick, tells the referee, and they don't waste time with, the attempted conversion, and they just get on with restarting play to Scotland with a penalty for obstruction? Why? Yeah, I just want to get on my... We need consistency, and I also think we need a bit more transparency and clarity in that regard, because there'll be people who've been watching international and top-level rugby for years who may not be aware that there has been that law change. I think especially with new people, new viewers to the game, new fans or more casual viewers who may have in past years not see that TMO involvement, and now suddenly they're seeing it. It's just kind of needs some consistency. We're not seeing consistency now. Dow scores her 50th test try on 31 minutes as a result of several phases of play later. Obviously, Scotland get that penalty. Can't make much of it. England get the ball back, and Abby Dow scores her 50th test try on 31 minutes. Clifford will get her second try right on half-time as well. So Dow being, one of only two English outside backs to score tries today. It was forward dominated with the try scoring. Let's be clear on that. Very forward dominated. I think the forward pack has helped win the game for England with their scrummaging and their line out play and their breakdown play. Although the outside backs had their moments and the kicking game was also really good. Aitchison has to be given a lot of credit for her kicking game. Rowland as well. Abby Dow, there has been some really good kicking in open play. So it's 26-3 at half time, and you're thinking, okay, England are going to kick on and continue with that momentum and keep the scoreboard ticking over. Now, with Cocaine's try at 46 minutes, which is, again, a forwards try, rolling maul, which makes up for the try she's had disallowed, that's on 46 minutes. Aitchison has converted all of these apart from Dow's try, by the way. Had a brilliant day on the boot in tough kicking conditions. England sort of lose their way, and I think in the semi-final and potentially the final or the third place playoff, in the remaining games, that intensity has got to be there for 80 minutes, and I think they lose their way. The game, the weather is not helping. Now in this period, there's a TMO check there's a kick through, and Jones is going for the ball, and then the defender places the ball down. So there's a TMO check, so they are still trying to score points. That was on 57 minutes, but there's a good 20 minutes where the game loses all kind of direction, becomes very scrappy. There's a lot of penalties here, and I am surprised, even though Scotland have lost the game, they played their hearts out. Let's not take away from the fact that Scotland have defended resolutely, especially in that second half. They've kept trying. That's important. There was no heads going down and give up. They did keep trying. They wanted to keep playing themselves. But the penalty count, and this is where I think the referee has had a poor game. I think the referee in the last game had a poor game, and I don't want to bang the referees because I think they've been pretty decent in this tournament. But that penalty count for Scotland at scrum time, at breakdowns, even at line out, just wherever it was, the penalty count for Scotland, at which point, how many warnings do you have to give them before sin-binning players? Because that penalty count was ridiculous. And it was brought up in commentary that the penalty count was shocking. Let's be honest, it was ridiculously high. That one is a head scratcher for me, that Scotland didn't lose a player for 10 minutes for repeat infringements. We've seen it in many previous games that teams have been given a warning and then it continues, players off. So again, I think in the two quarterfinals today, I think the referee in both games not at their best. Now Aitchison would get her try on 65 minutes, moving into the centres when the subs bench is used and Harrison comes on. At one point there were 3 fly halves for England on the field. I know obviously Kildun's out, with that concussion and therefore couldn't play this week, ruled out. And so they've experimented with a few things today, and maybe that assisted England, maybe it didn't, maybe it, it's worth an experimentation. But Aitchison, I think, had a fantastic game at 10 and then latterly at 12. Gets her try and converts from 65 minutes. But again, this second half for England, I know that, they've won the game. The conditions aren't great, but they lost that intensity. There were some sloppy errors. I think the flow of the game was interrupted with the use of the subs bench and the replacements. And I think that's an area that England need to clear up. Is that intensity and focus and just getting basics right in changeable conditions. We don't know what the weather's going to do next weekend or the weekend after. It's a bit too far out, but it's that time of year. Weather's going to change. There's going to be damp conditions. And I think England were sloppy at times with just keep it tight sometimes. Just keep the basics going. And I think in that second half, they got a bit sloppy. They lost some intensity, lost a bit of focus. And Lloyd, I mean, look, fair play to Scotland. They kept trying. Ronnie Lloyd scored her try in 80 minutes. And I think Scotland deserved to get over the line with a try at some point. They did keep plugging away in difficult conditions in a very lopsided game. And look, they've tried. You can still the issues that Scottish rugby is facing and the women's game is facing is funding. We know this. We know that there's uncertainty for the next 12 months in regards to the Scotland women's setup, pathways, funding, contracts. I think Scotland have played pretty well at this World Cup. I do. I think they played well in the pool stages. I think they played really well against a very good Canadian side and really did test a Canadian side that's one of the best teams in the world. And that first 10 minutes, they were testing England. They've made a quarter-final. They've scored some good tries. They've played some good rugby. They've done some good things. So the uncertainty surrounding the Scotland game, the Scottish Union needs to sort that out. They need to come to a decision quickly. On the England side of things, not a perfect performance. Yes, the conditions had a part to play, but that second half, looking at it, they didn't continue with that momentum and that focus, and they got sloppy, and that could come back to hurt them against France or against whoever the next opponent after France is, depending if they make the final or the third place playoff. And to play like that in the second half, they won't beat the Black Ferns, and they definitely won't beat Canada. If they were to play like they played in the first half, then an England-Canada or an England-New Zealand final or an England-France semi-final, that's going to be a good game. But if they play like they played that second half against a French team that, again, was a bit Jekyll and Hyde. England were a bit Jekyll and Hyde today. They get the win. They're comfortable on the scoreboard, but room for improvement, I think. Overall, tournament so far, crowd numbers have been fantastic. Engagement's been fantastic. I think, for the most part, it's been a good tournament. There's been a few controversial moments, and including what now appears to be a biting incident in the previous game that I didn't actually see at the time. Early on in the second half, it just passed me by. And after I did the match review and I just was preparing all my notes for this, it's been swirling on social media about what's happened in the previous game between France and Ireland. And look, we will see what comes of it. But the referee was right in line with it and missed it. So that, again, there's been a couple of refereeing performances in the last couple of games where I'm like, could be better as well. But for the most part, I think the officiating's been really, really good. But in the knockout stages, some of the officials have not necessarily had the best games. But there we go. Thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts on the game and the World Cup so far in the comment section below, and I'll have some more content for you all, very, very soon.